Hey, welcome back. This is the final video, so I want to thank the Sachem Public Library for making all of these videos possible. And speaking of books, today we're going to take a look at some books that are inspirational or books that teach you, like how-to books. Well, there's a lot of those, and some of them are great. Now, I've pulled out some of the ones that I love, and we're going to take a look at those books today. Let's do it. All right. Oh, these are these are heavy. So, before we get to the how-to books, let me show you some books that inspire me. I read comic books, and I've read comic books since I was a little kid. And reading comic books has always made me want to make a comic book. But as I got older, I became more inspired by other kinds of art and writing too. When you're making something on your own, you're pulling constantly from all the different things that are in your head and inside your heart. And that's what a lot of these books represent. I loved going to museums when I was a kid. It wasn't the kind of art that I was seeing in my everyday life, but that was sort of the point. It was something different. I know this might be not Spider-Man or Batman, but don't discount this kind of art. This is foundational. These are masters that made this, and everything you learn today, you can learn it from these folks. Here's a couple of more modern painters. Again, not comic book work, as you can see, but just the exploration of color and the freedom in her line. You can learn a lot from this. And actually, this book in particular about Cecily Brown has got a lot of text in here. An interview with her. Read about what other artists think and feel and how they work. That always helps. Here's a book that has helped me a ton. Art Deco. Alright, now let's get into the how-to books. These are great. I'll show you, this was one of the very first how-to books I ever got when I was a kid. It's How to Draw Comics the Marvel Way. They still make this book, and I'm almost positive that your library has it. You should definitely check this one out. And for some of the older kids, Understanding Comics by Scott McCloud is invaluable. This is a huge book. I picked this book up when I was maybe about 14, 15 years old. And it taught me so many things. So if you find this book too, get it. The next thing too is just, there's things that you need to learn how to do when you make a comic book. Perspective is certainly one of them. It's a very important thing. And it's not easy. So picking up any kind of book that teaches you how to draw in perspective is going to be incredibly helpful. If you see one, read it. Andrew Loomis has done a whole series of books on how to draw faces and hands, and it is an incredibly useful book. The human face has so many different varieties and how they're formed, and as an artist, you need to figure out how to technically put that together. Different angles, different shapes. So, a book like this is going to help you a lot. This is an entire book about how to draw drapery. Loose-fitting clothing, curtains, dresses. Now, if you're going to draw comic books, you need to learn how to draw a million different kinds of things. Capes and suits and boots. All this stuff is going to be helpful. Just a book about rendering in pen and ink. This is literally just an entire book about how to ink. The different ways you can do it, all the different kinds of tools. You know, we went over some of it, but my little videos are nothing compared to an entire book about a subject. One of my favorite artists ever, Mario Cooper. And I just learned about him maybe about a year ago. So I went and I tried to find as many books of his as I could. They're not easy to come by, but hopefully your library might have some. He's an illustrator. He's a watercolor painter. That's what this book is mostly about. Here's some of his illustration work. He was working from this photograph. But then he gets into how to do watercolor, which is one of my favorite ways to make art. I love Mario Cooper. He's brilliant. A lot of artists just put out books of their process. It's not necessarily a how-to book, but it features a lot of art that's in the midst of being made. So you get to see how they do it. Here's a book, Stuart Immonen. This is an ad house put this book out. And you'll see that it's just a lot of sketches and studies. Getting to look in on an artist like this and see how they work is incredibly helpful. It's great that he includes things like this so you get to see how he's actually accomplishing his work. Here's another one, Steve Ditko. I mean, this is the guy that basically created Spider-Man. This gives you a little bit of his history, which, like I said earlier, again, it's just great to learn about artists' lives as well. Everybody makes comics differently. Steve Ditko is one of the best at it. Here's some interesting preliminary work that he was doing. Toth, another one of my favorites, is Genius Illustrated. Your library, if they don't have it, they might be able to get this. You can ask. He is one of the most incredible artists that's ever made comics before. Any kind of art, not just comic books. He's worked in animation. He's worked in advertising. This book lets you really take a look at how it's done. You know, you're printing not just the actual art, but the piece of paper that he actually drew it on. And you get to see some of the lines in there that wouldn't be printed in the actual book. See, he did a lot of animation work. These are character studies for cartoons. I think he did all these pages just to practice lettering. This is all done by hand. It's amazing. And finally, one of the all-time greats, Milton Caniff. I don't have enough words to say about how good Milton Caniff is. And again, this isn't Spider-Man, it's not Batman, I get it. But this is the kind of artist that taught the people who made those books how to draw. This is one of my favorite drawings ever. I love it. The way he inked, the mood, the lighting, the use of color. Milton Caniff. Absolutely brilliant. The last book I want to show you guys is a brand new book. It's a reprint of older material, but this book just came out maybe a few months ago. So you can absolutely find out if your library has it or if they can get it. It shouldn't be too difficult. And I bring this book up because it's Batman, which is, my favorite. But if you're a person who wants to make comic books, it's always great to see actual original comic book art. And that's why this book is so great and special. It's a movie adaptation from the original Batman movie that came out in 1989. And when you bought the book in 1989, you read the comic and it was the art, colored, everything, finished, and that's all. But this book, what it does is it prints the original art next to every page of the finished art in the book. So as you're going through, on your left is always going to be, you can see the original Batman movie book, it says up on the top. And this is got the original inked artwork that was made and then sent to somebody else that added color. And then that got sent to a printer. And when it came out the other end, it looked basically like the right side. But the ability to see the difference between the two is incredibly helpful. So this is not just a cool Batman book. It's also like a little it's a little lesson. Here's a cool thing. If you notice, the page color changes between these two panels, right? I don't know if the camera's picking that up, but this is a little bit bluer. What's going on here is the artist must have originally drawn these panels and was unhappy with the way they looked, so then redrew them and cut and pasted them into this page. I love something like this where if you look at this side of the page, you can see the brush strokes, you can see where the ink kind of fades out a little bit, but then when it gets reproduced, well, it's just so solid looking now. So you can see the difference, how it was actually drawn and what it might end up looking like in the end. Here you can see he used white paint over the original ink drawing to create this fog effect. But when you scan this and photocopy it, the computer doesn't know the difference between the paint and the ink, so it just shows up as fog, which is the way it's supposed to look. Well, that's it. End of the road. These videos have been a lot of fun to make, and I hope that you've enjoyed watching them. I hope you learned something too. maybe a little. So more than anything, I hope you're just writing and drawing and making your own comic books. And I can't wait to see what you guys do. They're going to be great. I know it. I know it. All right. See ya.